kneel before the taco pie. You're gonna need a little bit of lettuce, some cheese, a big hunk of chowed meat, some taco seasoning, sour cream, and 4 things of crescent rolls. And that fills the big pan to your left. You'd need about 2/3 of that for the other size pan. Now, first thing you have to do when making this thing is you gotta make sure you do this with crescent rolls. The reason I choose crescent rolls, and I don't know if you guys have these no matter where you are in the world, but I'm pretty sure they're kind of common. But I do want to remind you guys that you need to use crescent rolls. We've tried pizza dough before, it just didn't work. It didn't have the kind of buttery flavor that you want. It didn't have that texture because when a crust cooks, it actually just hardens or it's too soft. This one has both, and that's what makes this thing stand out a little bit more, is because on the inside, it's a little softer, and on the outside, it crunches. So it's got a really, really unique texture to it that makes it very, very, very tasty. Now, as you can see right now, all you gotta do is you gotta unroll these little crescent rolls, and you just smear it around to have a nice, solid, decent-sized layer on the bottom. You also want to go ahead and wrap the crescents on the walls of the pan as well, so that you kind of have this little casserole thing, this sealed taco pie, and that is basically the first step. Next up, you gotta prepare your meat, ladies and gentlemen. I guess that should be the first step, but, you know, it depends. You can multitask if you want to. You gotta brine your meat like you would any other traditional time while you're making your tacos. Whether or not you do your own seasoning or you pick it up from the store, that is up to you. One thing I will recommend you guys to do is pay attention to the amount of liquid in this. Let your meat sit and simmer. Make sure that and you take it away from the heat so the sauce can thicken, because any excess liquid is going to make the crescents really, really soft, and even when you cut into it, there's just going to be a big puddle at the bottom of the pan, and it makes it really, really hard for this thing to reheat, which is something I want to talk about because I'm not a big leftovers guy. Generally, things don't reheat the way that I like them to. I can't microwave and nuke them if I want to. You know, chicken wings don't go over well. Lots of things that have texture or liquids in them are just going to soften up. This one does not do that. This heats up extremely well. I had some today after I cooked it last night. So that's one thing to pay attention to. Do not be afraid to make large amounts of this because it'll reheat well and it'll feed you for the next day or two. So it's about this time where things look like it's going together. After you have the meat prepared, you just dump it right on in there. As you can see, the walls are now finally made. This is where you add a very thick layer of cheese. We used about a pound of cheese, ladies and gentlemen, just for this portion right here. You sprinkle it on, you make a nice solid layer so there's not too much meat looking through at the bottom. After this part, you go ahead and you take the remaining crescent rolls and you layer that over top and you seal all of this in. So one instrumental thing that you have to know before you actually put this final layer of crescent rolls in is you have to do it thin and you have to do it balanced. If this thing is not a solid thin layer, you're going to mess it up. If this is too clumpy in some areas, it's not going to cook all the way through. And if that's a problem, somebody's going to bite into that thing and taste raw dough. That's not the texture you're looking for. That's not going to be appealing to a lot of people. So make sure that you put on the layer thin and even, and it's going to turn out just right. So now that your taco pie is basically made, you go ahead and preheat the oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. You throw this bad boy in there for about 15 to 20 minutes until you start seeing the outer edges kind of start turning brown, this thing starts crusting, and then take a little knife to poke into maybe some of the thicker areas to make sure that it's actually flaky and hard on the inside versus the doughy kind of excess that I mentioned previously. At that point, you finally have your taco pie made. And finally, the moment we've been looking for. Now, this thing is finally done. You still have your lettuce, your salsa, whatever you want along the sides. You can put some more sour cream on top, and that's what I do. You're going to see a piece of how I do it. And the reason I call it pie is because even though this thing kind of looks like some kind of taco casserole, I always nicknamed it pie because I always spread a layer of sour cream over the top and then sprinkle something like lettuce or more cheese on the top. And at that point, to me, it just kind of reminded me more of a pie than some kind of a casserole. So that is my recipe, guys. Give it a go. It's just an alternative for your standard traditional taco night. Instead of just having tacos and tortillas, put it together, make this kind of unique taco pie, and have at it. This thing is delicious. It reheats well. It's a great thing to add. Costs you roughly 15 or 20 bucks depending on what kind of things you have together. This entire thing cost me $20 out of pockets for new sour cream and all of it. So again, dig in, ladies and gentlemen.